And we keep speaking about migration. Now we go to Sweden, and we have here Charlie Weimers. He's the Vice President of the European Conservatives and Reformists, also a member of the European Parliament. Thank you, Charlie, for being here with us. And speaking about Sweden, one of those European countries most affected by that illegal migration. Do you think it's a process that can be reverted?
The same country as it used to be in the future. But what we need to make sure is that Sweden has a bright future. In order to accomplish that, we need to pursue very determined policies to expel those who will not accustom to the Swedish way of life, those who immigrated illegally, and to make it very clear that in Sweden, we stand for Swedish values. If you don't like that, Sweden is not for you.
Como sueco, ¿cree que esa inmigración, sobre todo la musulmana, está provocando cambios?
Do you think that Muslim migration is provoking changes in Sweden besides demographic changes, and they can be social and cultural?
An Islamist political party ran for office in Sweden. That's unheard of previously. And we see a lot of people coming out for another way of life than the Swedish. And what do I mean with that? Well, separation of girls and boys, separate laws for Muslims, and so on and so forth. This is something that goes beyond numbers. It's something that affects us here and now. And also, of course, the fact that one of our most known artists, Lars Vilks, was deemed to be a legitimate target by Islamists for defaming the so-called Prophet Muhammad, and had to live with bodyguards 24/7 in Sweden, is an indication that we have been on the wrong path, and we need to reinstate freedom of speech. We shall not accept any kind of shadow caliphate in Sweden where people feel that they cannot speak their mind.
¿Cómo se puede solucionar este problema tan grave?
How can we solve that serious problem in societies such as Belgium or the Swedish society, formed by generations of migrants who initially were illegal but now have a European password?
Well, until now,
how can we sort that out?
And politicians has been quite passive in dealing with youngsters who are leaning either towards crime or towards Islamism. I mean, the Swedish government has even funded Islamist organizations. That ends right here, right now, with the new Swedish government. We are going to stop the funding of Islamist organizations so that they can no longer lure young people into their milieu. We are going to stop foreign funding of mosques. And we are going to strike down on gangs and reestablish justice in Sweden, because this therapeutic model of the socialists have not worked. If you start another youth center, well, the Islamists or the gang leaders will go there and recruit the people. It's time for new policies, for new ideas. And this is how we start. But we must also end the constant stream of newcomers that will not find their place in Sweden. We must end asylum migration to Sweden.
So politicians and bureaucrats in Brussels and media silence that problem. But how do citizens in Sweden perceive this, and how that perception of illegal migration, how has it evolved?
So-called ghettos outside the big cities. What we're seeing now is that small towns in the size of 40,000 inhabitants have their own segregated areas. And people are reacting to that, of course, when your class is the class of your son is suddenly 1/3 immigrant from nowhere because of the policies of the government. But up until now, the Swedish middle class have been able, I'm going to be frank, they have been able to virtue signaling by their voting for the progressives, and then using the Swedish school voucher system to put their kids into all Swedish schools and avoid the consequences of their own votes. That is no more, because the problems have evolved and become so big that you may run, but you can't hide. People react when kids are being taught on national television to dress like they were poor to avoid being robbed outside their schools. This is the reason for the fact that Sweden has now a conservative government for the first time in 92 years.
En los últimos años, las instituciones europeas sí que han remado.
In the last few years, in European institutions, they have believed in gender policies. We don't know how that fits Islamic migration. Has that generated conflict in Sweden?
This whole situation has created a sort of syntax error among progressives, because on the one side, they're in favor of feminism, right? On the other side, they're in favor of everything that is not Western. So when that collide, they have a big problem. That's why they lashed out against conservatives, pointing to the fact that we have a phenomenon in Sweden called balcony girls. If you haven't heard of balcony girls, I'll explain it for you. These are girls with a Middle Eastern descent who mysteriously fall from balconies after having wanted to integrate into the majority Swedish society. This is actually a term that is everywhere in Sweden today, because it's all too common. Today, even centrists are trying to address this problem, but for many years they avoided it. So it is a conflict, it is a problem, and it's only us conservatives that are ready to confront it, up front, because the others, they are accepting the fact that language classes for immigrants are dividing by demand of Islamists the classroom into the women's section and the men's section. This acceptance for Islamic or orthodox Islamic values has been widespread, but this is about to end.
¿Cuál es la postura que están tomando los?
And what's the position of Swedish Democrats before the social and political crisis of the country?
Denmark is leading the way here, actually. They have understood that if they want to preserve the social democratic welfare state, which I think personally is way too big and intervenes too much in people's lives, but that's another story. If you want to have a willingness among your citizens to pay taxes to the common good, you have to have a cohesive society. And they've understood that with mass migration, people will stop wanting to pay taxes to the government. So that's why they have a very strict immigration policy, and they are looking for a deal with African countries such as Rwanda to basically move the whole asylum procedure offshore, to move it to Africa. Even if you're given asylum, you will never put your foot in Denmark. You will have your refuge in Rwanda. The Swedish Social Democrats, after having seen that the new Swedish government will implement the most strict immigration policy in Europe, they had nothing negative to say. The only thing they said was, they are continuing our policies. They understand that the working class, those who go to their jobs in the morning and putting their kids to school, bringing them up, they are no longer ready to give away their country in the name of solidarity. So they are copying our model and the Danish model. It's a good thing, but I will expose their hypocrisy, because it was them that led us where we are today, with one shooting a day, 200 bombings the last 4 years.
Con esta situación que tenemos en la actualidad, ¿cuál cree que es el futuro que le espera a Suecia de aquí a 20 años y cuál le gustaría que fuese?
What's the future you expect for Sweden in the next 20 years?
Question for me. I mean, the reason I'm here is to fight for my 4 girls, their kids, kids, to have a Sweden, a Europe that they can feel safe in and prospering. And I'm gonna be realistic here. I don't know if the reforms that we are going to implement the next 4 years in Sweden will have fully worked in 10 years. This is a multi-generational task that we have in front of us. I think that a lot of gang members will be in prison or expelled from Sweden. Yes, I do. I think that migration will be lowered substantially to the minimum level. But I don't think that we will have the Sweden we want. We need to work at least 20, 30 years to get there. I'm going to do that.
Muchísimas gracias, Charlie Weimers.
Thank you so much, Charlie Weimers, Vice President of the ECR and member of the European Parliament. Thank you for being here at Frontera Sur, Southern Border. Thank you.